So much for the ceasefire in Gaza. Just hours after far-right marchers in Israel chanted death to Arabs during a demonstration in the streets of Jerusalem, Israeli warplanes bombarded the occupied Gaza Strip. This happened on Wednesday morning in the first series of airstrikes launched by the new government of Prime Minister Naftali Bennett. So now, I recently talked about Bennett, and I had a little bit of hopium, not for the fact that Bennett was good. No, in many different respects. I had mentioned that Bennett's actually worse than Benjamin Netanyahu. The only difference is that he was not as openly corrupt as Netanyahu, but actually far more right wing. And boy, I was wrong, and I'm the first to admit that one. He is a terrible right winger. He's a ultra nationalist. He boasted that when he was in the military, he killed a lot of Arabs. But I said that, well, a little bit of hope because at least he might be constrained by the Israeli parliament, of which he has very, very tenuous control over. And of course, they had to prove me wrong by being horrible. While initial reports indicate that no Palestinians, according to Common Dreams, were killed by the new bombing campaign, the air raid intensified fears of a fresh wave of violence by the Israeli government after just weeks of a tenuous ceasefire agreement paused Israel's deadly 11-day assault on Gaza last month, which killed more than 240 people. The Israeli military characterized the latest airstrikes as retaliation for incendiary balloons released into Israel from the Gaza Strip. The balloons reportedly caused at least 10 fires. Though, as far as I know, nobody was injured or killed. Abu Malek, or Abu Malik, who the Associated Press identified as one of the young men launching those balloons, said the incendiary objects were released into Israel in response to a far-right government-sanctioned march through Jerusalem, where demonstrators rallied along several members of the Israeli Knesset and chanted, quote, "death to Arabs." Yeah. So that's horrible. And where's the outrage about that, by the way? Mainstream media. Mainstream media. Why are you not saying that chant was horrible? I mean, again, you would have massive outrage if a group of Arabs, Palestinians, chanted death to Israel. Your hair would be on fire. Your hair would be on fire. Absolutely. And for good reason. For good reason. I think that's a horrible chant, too. They're both horrible chants. Why don't we not do that? Why don't we not sanction that kind of hate? I mean, again, absolutely unacceptable and outrageous for either side to be chanting to the death of the other side. Okay? Now, Abu Malek, dude, what are you doing? Like, sending over balloons, by the way, that are on fire is not going to do anything except for cause a disproportionate response by Israel, which is exactly what happened. Again, the thing is that you have that massively disproportionate response. You have homemade fire balloons versus U.S.-made bombs and F-35s. I mean, come on. Seriously. Completely 100% disproportionate. But that, of course, really characterizes the entire quote-unquote conflict. And I hesitate calling it a conflict. In reality, again, it is oppression. It is ethnic cleansing, essentially. Israel, again, is backed by the United States and has billions of dollars worth of munitions, arms, Iron Dome, whereas the Palestinians have cheap rockets and fire balloons. It is not proportional at all. It is an occupation. Not only that, but Israeli police also fired rubber bullets at Palestinians who tried to disrupt the march, which reached the main entrance to the old city's Muslim quarter. Now think about it this right? So you had this group of disruptive people that are chanting death to Arabs right outside where a bunch of Muslims live. What did you think was going to happen? That was on purpose. You were goading these people into provoking a response. So then, when they produce a response, you respond disproportionately. And it goes on and on and on. And it never ends. And unfortunately, there are members of the Israeli government that don't want it to end. And American defense contractors that also don't want it to end, because we are the world's biggest arms supplier. And if people aren't bombing each other, well, then we lose out on sales. And that's what it is. Now, several members of Congress called this out, saying, quote, this is Representative Jamal Bowman saying about the chant, this is a genocidal chant. Let's call it for what it is. I represent many within the Jewish community who disavow and condemn this hateful language. Why does only a small portion of our Congress? That is a good question. Of course, the obvious answer is, for one, they don't want to be labeled anti-Semitic. And for two, there are powerful lobbying interests. Representative Rashida Tlaib, also, this is the first Palestinian-American woman ever elected, said this: after racist and violent death to Arab marches earlier today in Jerusalem, children in Gaza are being woken by bombs in the middle of the night. Israel's government doesn't value Palestinian life, she continued, and it has managed a decades-long ethnic cleansing project funded by the U.S. The Israeli airstrikes came just over 48 hours after the country's parliament nearly voted to replace former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with Bennett. At Chants, defenders of Palestinian rights did not applaud, given the latter's record and policy stances. As I mentioned, massively right-wing, is not in favor of a two-state solution. He's in favor of a one-state solution. Israel taking control of everything. Massively pro-settler, massive pro-expansion, which is, again, only going to continue to inflame violence and stoke violence and disproportionate responses. So, again, endless war. Wonderful. In fact, his positions include support for annexing the West Bank in violation of international law. Ariel Gold of Code Pink wrote this on Monday, quote, while being hailed as many as the opportunity for a fresh start, Naftali Bennett is at best a continuation of Netanyahu's policies and at worst an ideologue whose positions are to the right of Netanyahu. So yeah, new boss, same as old boss, and actually worse, probably worse. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.